so hopefully everybody's able to join us again. I know there were some chat questions sent in, so if you did send in some questions already, please resubmit those. Those did not carry over. Our apologies for that. So resubmit those for us. And so we'll go quickly through PSI, what's changing with the LARE, what changed in our orientation guide and candidate agreement, and the April 22 schedule. So CLAR has a new partner, PSI. We've moved away from Pearson VUE and have partnered with PSI to administer our exam. What this will bring us is Section 3 and 4 will now be available through online proctoring. We'll have equity between the two modalities and the experiences that candidates experience. We had some imbalance there before. We have heightened our exam security. We have comparable or actually increased in many areas physical test center locations. And then we also increased our overall testing capacity through online proctoring for 3 and 4 as well. As I mentioned just a second ago, we have online proctoring available for all 4 sections. We will have breaks for all. Previously, you couldn't take breaks if you did online proctoring. You now can do that. You will be able to utilize the calculator and whiteboard tool within the exam software for all the sections. And then the big change for breaks is that now with breaks, you will need to do your review and make final selections to items that you have already seen prior to your break, as you won't be able to go back after your break. Our exam for April 22 will be held March 28th through April 9th. We are in the very final stages of opening registration. We should be having an announcement about when that will open this week. And so watch for that through email and social media, and we will get it open as soon as we can. So what's the same in the registration process? You're going to register on our website. It's still a 2-week window. You can reschedule within that window. And you can also still go in and look at available test centers through PSI. There will be a link live on our website, so you'll just need to log in and click on that link, and it'll take you over to the PSI search feature, and you can see centers near you and current availability of appointments. Keeping in mind that that system is live. So if you saw an appointment that was available at one point when you came back to actually schedule, it could be gone since the system's live, but you can see roughly what's available. Some of the changes, you'll actually be able to click from the very last page of the registration. There will be a link that says schedule my exam. You'll be able to click that and it'll take you over to the PSI system, and you'll be able to schedule immediately right there. You can access the online proctoring exam from our website as well. So previously you would have accessed that through the exam vendor. You will actually now launch that exam through CLAR. And then you can actually access at any time the PSI appointment system from our website if you decide you need to reschedule or cancel and decide on a different date or a different location. And you can also switch between modalities. If you decide to schedule at a test center and then you want to change that and do it online, you can easily come in and reschedule your appointment for an online appointment. The resources that you'll have, you'll have the calculator through the exam system. So it'll be built right into the computer. You will also have access to a whiteboard. And so you can utilize both of those. The whiteboard does store anything that you put in it. It will store it through the duration of the exam, unless you erase it. And so you can use that the entire time during testing. For the orientation guide, we updated that obviously to include all the information about PSI, but we also updated the candidate agreement. The big change there is that if you are participating in volunteering or are asked to volunteer for a prep course or prep type committee for the LARE, you can't do that until 3 years post your final exam. So some of the common questions we got last time, we wanted to take a minute to review. The calculators are built into the software now for all. There will be no physical calculators. Whiteboards are also built in for all candidates and will keep the notes the whole time during testing. And there are no physical whiteboards or scratch paper. Breaks are available for all candidates now. You can take as many as you need. As previously, the clock does not stop. The big change with the breaks is that you will need to review any items that you have seen and finalize your answer before that break. And so it will take you to a review screen, and you'll be able to see which questions you've seen, which questions are blank, which questions are flagged, finalize your answer, and then take your break. And then for special accommodations, we follow ADA standards. So if you do need an accommodation or have questions about a specific accommodation need, you can just send me an email and or email info@cog.org, and we'll get back to you on how to apply for those. If you had accommodations with Pearson, those are being automatically moved to PSI. We actually have a correction. We were given some information that I actually was not clear about. So many of the test centers for PSI actually do have lockers. And for those who don't have lockers, they have bags that will hang on the back of your exam chair that you can put things like keys and cell phones. So just remember to bring only essential items to the test center, but you can bring those items and either put them in a locker or a bag. Those items are not accessible during your exam. So if you needed medication or if you need food or beverages, then you would need to get an accommodation for those. Many of the test centers have water fountains, so you would have access to that during a break. For online proctoring, it's important that you do a system check on your device before you schedule your appointment. You'll also probably want to run another one a couple hours before your exam just to be able to identify any potential issues. The system does support both PC and Mac, but again, make sure that you check your computer with their system check. We are currently working on developing a sample of the whiteboard calculator so that you can see what that will look like, and we hope to have that very soon. And then as far as tools to access during the exam in order to work within the calculator, the exam software, or the whiteboard, it will be the mouse and the keyboard. If you need your mouse configured for left-handed, just reach out to us and we can make sure that that accommodation is made for you. The structure of the exam, the time, the cost, all of that is still the same. So none of that has changed. As far as COVID-19 stuff goes, it'll be local government guidance, though we do encourage you, of course, to bring your mask always. The recording from our session last week is currently available on our website on that homepage, and this recording will be also made available. And then if we have questions after today, please reach out to us and we'll get back to you as soon as we can with an answer for that. So now I can open it up, Marissa, to any questions that we've had submitted so far.
Sure, absolutely. So we did have a question about how the changes affect test takers with special accommodations, and I think you have already answered that. Special accommodations do carry over if you had them previously approved, and for individual cases, do please reach out to us. There's another question. I think you may have also answered this about we're working on a tool to kind of get access to see what the whiteboard looks like. But someone's asking, does it block the screen? Is there any consideration for time based on the time that it would take, the extra time that it might take to use that whiteboard?
There's no extension on the time. The whiteboard can actually be adjusted in size. So if you needed to make it bigger or smaller, you can do that.
Great. And you had said that the whiteboard does keep notes on there. Someone is asking, will the whiteboard erase when a break is taken?
It will not. So it stores through the end of the exam.
Great. And there's a question about clarifying bringing food and water for breaks.
So if you need access to food or like a bottled water instead of like a water fountain at the test center, you will need to get an accommodation to access that.
Okay. And is that the same for online?
Well, I guess technically not because you're online. So you can, when you go to the bathroom, you could stop by your kitchen, I guess.
There's a question that came in that I'm not sure about. So if the person who wrote it in might want to clarify in another question, they're asking related to breaks, how will those with special accommodations be able to take breaks? So I'm just asking you to clarify that so we might be able to answer in a better way for you. Someone's asking, they missed the comment about storing items at the test center. Can you just run through that again?
Sure. Many of the test centers have lockers. so you can store in a locker. If they don't have a locker, they'll have a bag that you can hang on the back of your seat and put personal items in. Just so you are aware, the bag and the locker are not accessible during a break. So you would, if you needed something in them, you would need to let us know so that we can make appropriate accommodations for you, such as medication or things like those.
Great. Someone's asking for the online proctoring. They have a bookshelf in their room, or if there's another table in the room with books on it. Is that okay?
It should be fine as long as they're out, like they're not next to you. So as long as they're not where they would think you were like you were reaching for those or messing with those, you should be fine. You don't need to clear all your shelves. They would just, if you had books on your desk where you're testing, they're not going to want you to have those.
Great. We're getting a question about a comments tab and if that will remain in the exam.
Our intention is, yes, to keep that comment tab in there, so you can do that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we received a thank you for working towards creating a sample whiteboard so that candidates can use it. They're also asking, I think you mentioned this last week, but just to say it again, if the whiteboard or the exam itself is allowed to be used on a touchscreen laptop. I think it says last week we said no tablet pens, but would it be something where a touchscreen laptop was allowed?
I mean, I think you'd run into the proctor wondering what you were doing. So I would encourage you to use a mouse. I mean, I think the software would technically work. The problem would be is the proctor, it would be against the proctor's code. So then they may flag you and wonder why you're touching the screen.
Okay. And then there's how would one get a special accommodation for food needed during a break?
Yeah, so just shoot us an email at info and we can walk you through getting approved for accommodation.
And so I think I do have more clarity now on the question of what special accommodations and breaks. I think that this is unique to a special accommodation, but they're asking, will we lose the questions we answered when we take a break? And so I think if you want to touch again on the reviewing questions before a break, that would be great.
Yeah, so the breaks work the same way, whether you have an accommodation or not. So they work the same for all candidates. When you take a break, it will warn you that you need to finalize your answer on any questions that you've seen. And so it'll pull up a review screen and it will tell you if you've seen a question, if you haven't seen a question, if you flagged that question, if you left that question blank. So you'll need to go back and finalize any answers on questions that you have seen before you take that break, because all of the questions that you've seen before a break will be locked when you come back.
Someone's asking, do we think that the whiteboard will be available on CLARB's website for practice before the test? And that is what we are working on. And so again, about the questions, reviewing them before a break, someone is asking, can you go back to skipped questions after a break?
You cannot, because it would flag you as having seen it, even if you didn't look at it. The minute you click past it, it's going to mark it as being seen. So you'll need to finalize your answer on any of the questions that are flagged as seen questions before you take the break.
And we are getting a question about equity and fairness between the exams from the previous structure to now with the move to PSI. So I'm not sure if you want to, I know you touched on it at the very beginning of this session again, but if you wanted to just run through those changes.
So like the changes, I guess I want to make sure I understand.
Sure. It's asking, the question is specifically asking about the equitability and fairness using the digital tools. But we know that the creation of that also created equity among all candidates taking the exam. So I'm not sure if that is something that we wanted to run through here.
Sure, absolutely. So during scoring of the LARE, we would actually do, just to give you a very high level of the process for scoring, they do pre and post equating. And so we manage and watch the item performance. And so if we saw a discrepancy statistically in item performance, so if the whiteboard in some way inhibited you, the performance on that item would go down and how well the item works would go down. And so our psychometrician would see that, and then that would be able to be reflected in the scoring of the test. So we will be able to equate or equalize this exam to the previous exams based on all of that statistical analysis.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Someone is asking, is a break optional or mandatory?
They're all optional.
There's a question about specific accommodations for use of other devices. And I think that would be a situation where for any special accommodation, you would contact us and we would work with you directly on a one-on-one basis for that. Someone is asking, I think that this is a question of is the structure of the exam changing? So you can answer this, but will the questions appear by categories? For an example, will multiple choice questions appear all together at once?
No, so the questions will be delivered the same way, randomized.
So, okay, so we're getting more questions about the clarifying on reviewing materials after a break. Someone is asking if they leave for a break, all the questions that they saw before that will be locked. Is that right?
That is correct. If you take a break, any questions you saw before your break will be locked and you won't be able to change your response.
We have a question here. When will exam registration open?
Well, I'm hoping very, very soon. We're in the final stages. We will be at least announcing this week when it will open if we don't announce that it's open. So we're working very hard on getting it open as soon as possible.
Great. Will any of the announced changes have an impact of the timing that scores are received by the candidates following the exam administration?
Nope, we don't anticipate any impact to the 4 to 6 week time window.
And it's 4 to 6 weeks following the last day of the exam administration, just to clarify for everyone on the call. Someone is again clarifying that the test has not changed, just the test centers and the modifications and recent announcements that go with it.
Correct.
There's a few questions about that that also go with has the time changed. So the blueprint for the exam has not changed. That is in the orientation guide and remains as it has. Someone is asking exam content. Are the questions, because I think we mentioned this before, are the questions randomized the same for each candidate, or does each person receive the questions in a different order?
Each person receives them in a different order.
Someone is asking if they can see all the questions before we answer. And
Technically, yes, but if you do that and then you take a break, you will have seen them all, and then you won't be able to go back. So if you think you'll take a break, don't do that.
Sure. So address the questions as they come, as they appear on your screen.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Does one have to take the exam via online proctoring?
No. So PSI offers centers throughout the United States and Canada, so you can take them on site as well. And so the center will be potentially different. Well, not potentially, it will be different than the center you had at Pearson VUE. So you'll just need to go and search. Just as a quick tip, when I was searching on-site centers, it defaults to a 5-mile radius to my zip code, and there's nothing within 5 miles of me. So I would make sure you broaden that radius just a little bit before you hit search.
Okay, great. So there's another question about are there changes to the test itself? They thought that was changing too, and the structure and the content is not changing. Will CLAR be monitoring any differences in those? Is this change permanent, or will we be monitoring how it kind of goes with the online calculator and whiteboard?
We are always monitoring how the exam is performing and how things are working. And so, yes, absolutely. We will always be monitoring that.
Great. And someone's asking if they have additional concerns or questions, they can reach out to us at any time. We have info@clarb.org. Our phone number is on our website, and we also monitor our 3 social media channels, which are Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Oh, okay. So someone is asking, just to clarify a little bit on online proctoring, is that taken from your own home? And can we just kind of run through that very quickly again?
Sure. Yeah, so for online proctoring, there are some requirements in order to be able to do it. You need a computer that meets the system check for PSI. You need a strong internet bandwidth so that you can support the delivery of the exam. You need a quiet, private place, similar to either a private office. It could be in your home. It can be in a place that you rent. It can be in your office. It just needs to be a private location. Your desk, you need 1 monitor. You need a mouse and keyboard. You need a clear desk and a clean space because they will do a room scan. If you have things like a whiteboard with writing on it, you'll need to cover that or erase it. As long as books on bookshelves are out of reach, you should be fine with that stuff. But just have the area around your desk where you'll be working and things that are within reach being clear and not implied that they're resources. So like if I were to show you my desk, I have notepads and sticky notes. They would make me get rid of all of that off of my desk before I started the test.
Great. And are you aware if there's a screen size limit for the monitor that you can use for online proctoring?
There's not a limit on how big it can be. I would encourage you to make sure it's not too small. If you're testing with a small laptop, just remember that the some of the items have graphics. And so you're going to want to make sure your screen is large enough to be able to see those graphics and see any contour lines or spot elevations or things like that that you might need to be able to see to answer the question.
That is actually the last open question that I have here. Please do feel free, if you're on this call and you have more questions, send those in to us. We're happy to stay on here for a few minutes while we're waiting. If you don't have any more questions, thank you for coming on. Yeah. Rebecca, do you want to let everyone on the call know what we have coming up next for CLARB?
Oh, yes, thank you. So just so you, well, assuming I know what we're talking about, so you guys are aware, we have our job task analysis coming up at the end of the month. We should be launching that. So all licensed landscape architects, all people seeking licensure landscape architects, and students can take that survey. So we will be sending that out. And so we encourage you to take it. It'll take about 45 minutes to finish, but you can start and stop it if you need to, as long as you use the same email address. You can share that among your peers. And so we're really encouraging people to fill out that survey, as that survey determines the blueprint for the LARE. And so the results of that will tell us what content needs to stay on the test, what content needs to be added, and if there's any content that should be removed. So it's a very important survey.
Awesome. Okay, some more questions have come in. Someone is asking if, so I'm going to also ask this publicly, if you can just clarify your question here. The question is, are there American and Canadian updates? So I'm not sure I fully understand that question. So if the person who wrote that in can just clarify specific to what, we're happy to answer that for you. Someone is, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to go on to the next question if you had a thought on that.
No, that's fine. We'll let them clarify before I speculate.
Okay. Someone is asking if we're able to share any reasoning for not allowing questions to be reviewed following a break.
It's mainly security. So we don't have control of what you do during a break, both in the bathroom and, quite frankly, for sure at home or at your office. And so because we can't control what you're doing and who you're talking to, that's a security measure.
Oh, this is a message from someone probably related to ASLA. Can this be shared with ASLA's exam committee and with the recorded sessions? Absolutely. This will also be available on our website publicly, so please do feel free to share away. These are important questions that everyone might have might be wondering the answers to. So we're happy to get all the information out there.
And if they need exam committee, the LARE prep committee that ASLE has, it has actually already been shared with them. And they received an update at their meeting this past week.
Great. Oh, okay. So this may be about the exam content, and it is not changing, but the clarity on that question is, will there be any new differences between the questions given to Canadian and American test takers, such as terminology?
So the exam is already structured in a way that both US and Canadian candidates see the same questions. And we actually have representation from across the United States and Canada to make sure that the terminology that we're using is either used in both areas, in all areas of the US and Canada, or there are parentheses or things to help you understand if we need to have different terminology in there. So all of that is actually already built in. The survey is administered to all of Canadian landscape architects and US landscape architects. So we have that also built into the survey process.
So we are getting quite a few questions, all sort of asking the same thing about a reasoning for the whiteboard and calculator. I believe that's, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, the whiteboarding calculator, again, is it's twofold, really. One is security. So with online proctoring, I can't control, or I have less control of the whiteboards if you're testing online from a security standpoint. And same thing with the calculator. And so we have to provide the resources in every modality, and they need to be the same. And so we have to roll it out for in-person as well.
Great. And if we wanted to just kind of plug the reminder that previous to these announced changes, if you were online, if you were taking or writing an exam via online proctoring, breaks were not permitted at all.
Correct.
So the last few questions were specific to that. We had about 4 or 5 in a row about that. Again, I think we are at the end of the question list. So if you do have more, keep them coming. We're happy to keep this open as long as questions are still coming in. Seems to be every minute or two, we'll get 6 at a time.
Everybody's typing.
Yeah. Okay, so someone's asking if they can use a larger display in addition to their laptop.
So you couldn't have dual display. You couldn't have the laptop open and your monitor, but if you had your laptop closed and had a monitor hooked up, then yes. So you'd want to get an external keyboard.
Do you want to this didn't come in, but maybe just a reminder from a question that we had last week about PC versus Mac, if anybody's wondering that on the call.
Yep, the system does support both PC and Macs, but you'll want to make sure that you do your system check just to make sure that your specific computer is going to meet the standards necessary for driving the exam. I will say we've also found that if it's like a work computer, sometimes firewalls and things like that will block it's like a lock screen thing that downloads to your computer for the test so that other programs can't run while you're taking the exam. And so some firewalls for companies will block those. So you'll want to, if you're going to use a work computer, definitely make sure that you check that. And if your IT department pushes out any kind of update, you're going to want to run it again just to make sure that whatever they're doing to protect your office equipment is not going to inhibit you from testing.
I'm not seeing any other questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Every time I say that, another one comes in. Oh, okay, so I think that this is a question based on the information that you were plugging for the job task analysis. You referred to the survey impacting potentially the blueprint. And so I think that they're looking at asking about potential changes and how that might impact candidates down the line.
Absolutely. So the survey will launch, as I mentioned, in the end of January. It takes about 6 weeks, and then there's quite a bit of work post that. So we won't have really any results till closer to the fall. And so we'll have to see what that does to the blueprint, and it really will just depend on the change. Since I've been here, we've had some that it didn't really impact at all, and then some that had a significant transition. And so based on the results, we'll have to launch what the transition plan is. Like I said, if it's minimal, we could have a new minimal change blueprint in April of 23. If it was major, we would have to see how long we would need to allow for that transition. So it really just depends on the impact. But once we know that, we'll start communicating that with the community.
Oh, a question now of touching on that second monitor. And if you had your laptop closed, you would need an external keyboard. So they're asking for more clarification on that. Does this presume that the laptop connected to Wi-Fi must be closed? I think that they're just looking for more clarity on how they could use a larger screen other than the laptop screen itself.
Yeah, so you can hook your laptop up to a monitor, but you can't have dual display. So the system will allow you to have dual display. And so if you have your laptop open and you have a monitor, it will register it as being dual screens. So you can't do that. So you'll need to close your laptop. Ideally, if you have like a docking station, that would probably even be easier. But you need to hook it up to the monitor and close your laptop. And then you won't have access to your keyboard, obviously, so you'll want an external keyboard so that you have access to a keyboard.
Great. There are some questions that are coming in that some of them are, I think, more concerns or looking for some additional information that might be unique to them. So I just wanted to remind everyone, please do feel free to reach out to us following the webcast. We have our phone lines open, info@larb.org is open, and as well as our direct messaging on our social media channels. And we can absolutely follow up with you on any specific concerns that you might have, especially if they relate to needing special accommodations. Okay, so someone is saying if the laptop is closed, you wouldn't be able to use your camera for the test proctor to monitor you. So I'm sorry, say that again. I think I said
you need an external camera. So my setup right now is I have my laptop closed, hooked up to a monitor with an external camera. You have to have that camera.
Great. So if you were looking for a larger display and your laptop was closed, you would need the external devices plugged in as well to be able to actually realize the exam and be seen on camera. Someone is just looking for a reminder. They arrived late. They're saying, can you now take the test at home? Yes, all 4 sections. Mm-hmm. 2 questions coming in about when will registration open. We are looking to open registration as soon as possible, and we'll be announcing that via email, social media, and our website. How does PSI scan the online proctoring exam environment?
So you would use that camera. You'll actually, whether it's an external camera or your laptop, you'll need to move it and scan the entire room. You'll need to scan under your desk. You'll need to explain any type of cords hooked up. So if you're like plugging in on an external monitor, you'll want to show them that you have a cord going your laptop to the monitor, then what the camera cord is, and so you just need to show them everything.
Great.
It's a little bit, if you tested previously through online proctoring, it's different. As Pearson used a cell phone, PSI actually uses the webcam that you'll be using.
Okay, great. Oh, a follow-up from the same person. Yes, while all 4 sections are available for online proctoring in an at-home environment, you can also still take all 4 sections at an in-person test center.
Yeah.
Oh, does the digital whiteboard ever run out of space if they're looking to keep their notes and sketches on until the end of their exam?
No, you can actually create additional pages.
So we are getting kind of some repeat questions from earlier and from the information that we have on our website at this point. So while we will have this open for a few more minutes, I do want to remind everyone, in addition to having this recording available, we will also be filtering through all of the questions, both from last week and today, and that come in over the course of the next few weeks, and be updating our FAQs on our website accordingly, so that anything that does come in that seems common, we will absolutely have answers publicly available for you. I'm not seeing any new questions come in at this time.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And again, please email us at info@larb.org if you think of a question, and we'll be happy to address that. And as Marissa mentioned, if you have specific questions about accommodations, info@clark.org, and we can walk you through getting that approval process and what that looks like. I may have seen 2 more come in, Marissa. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Oh, do you, at what point do you need to check in for your exam? If there's the security protocols for scanning the room and that kind of thing, how much time before your exam do you actually need to check in?
They're saying 15 minutes prior.
Great. Okay, and if you're testing from home, how do you handle outside audio like televisions or other sounds that might be around you?
I would find a quiet place. So if they hear people talking, they're going to flag that as people talking, even if it's a television show. So you need to have a quiet place.
Those were the last questions that came in. I'm not sure if there are more. It doesn't tell me if people are typing. Oh, maybe. Oh, can we use headphones through remote or online proctoring?
I think you probably have to get an accommodation for headphones, but I will find out and we will add that to our FAQs. But my understanding is that any type of device like that would need an accommodation approval.
Okay. And so I think now that we're talking about that, we're getting some other questions. If you live in a city where outside noise is unavoidable, how can you kind of handle that?
I mean, I think things like street noise are going to be different than someone watching like the news next door or in like your family watching television, right? And so what I would do is I would encourage you to basically find as quiet of a place as you can. But if there's gonna be lots of distraction and lots of construction and lots of noise, testing at home may not be the right solution for you. So it would just depend on if it's street noise, the proctor is gonna know you're in a city and it's street noise. But if it's someone having a conversation outside of your door and they're loud enough that the proctor is picking that up, they're gonna flag that.
Great. And then 2 questions are very similar to each other about earplugs or noise canceling headphones available in the test centers.
They will have noise canceling headphones at test centers, yes.
And a candidate would just request that upon arrival?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. Yes. I don't know if I said that on the.
For earplugs? Is that what?
For earplugs and headphones, mm-hmm. Yep.
Someone is asking a question about flagging questions. So they're asking, in general, what does that mean? And does that cancel the test?
No, so flagging questions would be, so when you're going through the test, there's like a little flag that you can click that says, I've answered this question, but I'm not confident in my answer, let's say. And so I want to easily be able to know what that question was. So then when I go to take a break, let's say, and the review screen comes up, it'll show the little flag and I'll be like, oh yeah, I wanted to look at that question again. So then I can go back and look at it one more time and finalize my answer before I take my break. And it will work the same at the end. And so as long as you have not seen the question before break, then you would be able to go back and finalize that answer. It's just a way for you to easily identify questions that you wanted to revisit.
And okay, so someone is asking specifically, while the time allotment has not changed per section, have we considered that with any of these changes? We
did, and the test should be long enough and you should have enough time in order to be able to test even with these changes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I misinterpreted the question about flagging, but I'm glad that we still answered that question out loud for everyone that might be new to the LARE and actually hasn't seen the flags on the questions before. So the question actually was specific for online proctoring and the proctor flagging outside noises that might be too loud. And so what might that mean for proctor flags and noise?
So, okay, so what would happen, so if you do something that the proctor is questioning, they'll do an incident. So they'll basically warn you and probably ask you about it. At that time, I would explain to them what it is. They may have you scan the room. They may check you again just to make sure that what you're saying they're hearing is true. if it's something that you can't explain, so for example, I'll give you kind of a minor or a major incident, right? So my phone is my audio, and I keep looking at it every time Marissa talks. If I were doing that while taking a test and I was like looking off screen in the same place, that's a minor flag, and I can get told that I shouldn't do that about 2 times, okay? And if I continue to do it, then they'll end my exam. But I have to do it twice, and they warn me twice before they do that. A major incident would be if my husband comes in the room and says, hey, what are we having for dinner? That's a major. The minute somebody enters the testing room, I would be shut down. So those are the kind of things that can kind of be major or minor. If they hear something, it would basically be you get warned. And then if it was something that you couldn't explain, then they would shut you down if they felt you had someone into the room or had violated the exam security.
Great. Thank you for asking that question again in the question option so that I could actually understand it and ask it appropriately. So the last question came in 2 minutes ago. Again, I know every time I say this, we get 6. So I'm giving it a few minutes of trying to fill the air. How many times of a flag for a violation would cancel the test?
It would depend on the violation. So as I mentioned, if someone enters your testing room, you're done. Aside from like a small child, they'll probably warn you with a small child. But if an adult walks in and starts speaking to you, they'll end the test. So you need to have a private room that people aren't going to bother you. If it's like someone said, out like me looking off the screen, it's 2 warnings. If I get 2 warnings before the 3rd time, they'll shut it down. So it really depends on what the warning is, the severity of the violation.
We have had a great turnout for both of these webcasts, and I do also want to thank everyone. I know that we shared this message, that it was happening via email, our website, and social media, and it was shared by ASLA. And I want to thank everyone else who also helped us share the word of these announcements and the webcasts as well.
All right. Well, as we mentioned when we started, this is being recorded, and so it will be posted on our website. The recording from last week is already available. And as you think of other questions, please send those in. And if they're good for the group, we'll make sure we update our information so that everyone gets the benefit of those answers. So thanks again, and have a great afternoon. Oh, one more came in.
Were whiteboards previously available when taking sections 1 and 2?
Through online proctoring, yes, through online. So you would have had to have used the digital whiteboard for 1 and 2 previously. So that was one of the inequities we wanted to fix.
The question is, did people actually use the whiteboards previously when taking sections 1 and 2 online?
I don't really think so, because I don't think they actually needed it, which is one of the reasons kind of why we were a little bit less concerned, and we were more concerned about getting online proctoring available to help manage the challenges of COVID. But with 3 and 4, people definitely use it. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon and a great weekend. Bye.